Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall for our show after the final conclusion of probably the longest gateway race that probably anybody can remember from these. Between lightning delays and cautions and exploding brake rotors, we had no shortage of just about everything you wanted. As long as what you wanted were multiple restarts where nobody could get around the fastest car of the day, and multiple people that were having great runs until the brakes decided to fail and spread shattered steel, not carbon, everywhere. Yeah, but I think the most important thing is it's now Sears Point week. Thank goodness. After these last couple of weeks, I certainly hope that we're not going to have any delays like that, but we'll find out. So we'll talk about the Cup Series race action here, Xfinity and the Truck Series here as well. I've got a lot to cover tonight. I also have a special announcement about the Sears Point week coming up here a little bit later in the show. We'll do trivia here as well for a long-time show on here. So I'm glad this one isn't quite as late the evening as our show in Charlotte last week, but hopefully we'll still have a good time on this one. So again, unofficially in the results here, your race winner is Kyle Busch, back in victory lane, this time with the 3 Cheese sponsorship there on the number 8. A great effort by him after winning the pole and being really among the leaders most of this day, except for the portion where Ryan Blaney seemed to have the field very well in his back pocket. Kyle Larson, William Byron always being a factor in the finish here as well, despite the fact that it was described incorrectly that Larson was running last for a lot of this race. He was having his share of struggles here, but they're Kyle Larson struggles. That's like running, oh no, he's 18th. Like, big deal. So there's that going on. But Denny Hamlin, your runner-up finisher, I'm sure that's going to be another interesting podcast on top of everything else here. With Joey Logano, your third-place finisher. Logano finally getting a good run after what's been you talk about a disastrous series of races these last few weeks. Larson may have been hot and cold in terms of his overall finishes, but Logano has been downright terrible here since the Bristol Dirt race. And so coming back to a race that he won last year, for him to pull off a very quiet top 5 in this one, and a third-place finish there, I'm sure is fine for him. Kyle Larson in the 4th spot, and Martin Truex in the 5th spot there, coming back from picking up some of the brake rotor pieces off of Carson Hocevar's car. We'll definitely talk about the Hocevar story here in a little bit. The rest of your top 10, Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Michael McDowell, and Kevin Harvick. If memory serves, McDowell was pretty good in this race last year, too. One of the many races that he was kind of having a breakout season in 2022. And with McDowell doing as well as he did at Sears Point last year, this is definitely a point of some positive momentum for him as well. Chris Buescher just outside the top 10 in the 12th spot behind Christopher Bell. Good to see Buescher get a good run at the track where he wasn't able to run last year when Zane Smith took over his ride because of COVID regulations at the time. Buescher comes back and finishes 12th. Another driver who, of course, was among the top 3 finishers at Sears Point last year and also has some positive momentum coming up here. But this race was very much as it was about the race winners, and it seemed like it was the same top 4 for all those restarts in the last 40 laps. And, it seemed like as long as Kyle Busch could clear Larson, which he seemed to consistently be able to do, the finish of this race didn't seem like it was really well in doubt. It felt like you could have had 30 restarts, and it probably would have played out exactly the same way. I guess until everybody started running out of fuel. Kyle Busch, your winner. But at the back of the field, several drivers with all kinds of problems here. Key of those, of course, being the situation with the steel brake rotors coming apart on several cars, much to a spectacular degree. And very thankful that, at least from the reports we're hearing about these drivers, that they're okay after this. Although there was a pit crew member off of Eric Jones' crew where there was some debate about if Austin Dillon was involved in the incident. It was clarified that he wasn't, but something happened there in the 43 pit, and we're certainly hoping that crew member is doing well. The last report was that he was awake and alert, but Tyler Reddick's crew stepping in to lend one of their crew members in after they fell out of the race to help the 43 car reach the finish line there, and ultimately Jones with an 18th place finish, so under certainly very difficult circumstances, getting a good run there. But as I was starting to say, a lot of other big names out there having terrible runs out here. Last of those being Alex Bowman, whose parachute deployed on that last restart there, dropped him out of the top 15 back to the 26th spot at the finish. He's still shown under power there in the results, but just ahead of BJ McLeod and Brad Keselowski, who just got back on the lead lap in the closing stages. Keselowski with a souring engine from the very beginning of it. About lap 44 or so, he started to drop off the pace. Had to spend several pit stops there, having them change the spark plugs. Ultimately turned out to be something the team couldn't fix. And as Clint Boyer was very right to say, as much as I'm not a big Clint Boyer fan of him in the booth, he was very on point on this. It shows why you don't give up. And Keselowski made up that ground. He was about 3 laps down, I believe, at one point. Gained all of them back, including the last one towards the end of the race there, of course, with the number of cautions that absolutely helped with that. But Keselowski ultimately a 28th place finish, much better than the last place run that he seemed headed towards there in the first 50 laps there or so. Other drivers there, Bubba Wallace had his streak of strong runs there, including the All-Star race, unfortunately broken. But again, this is a result that does not indicate how fast he was going. He worked his way up to the 11th spot, which seemed to be about the best that he had run the entire afternoon. Was working on Byron for 10th, and then unfortunately, brake rotor came apart, put him in the outside wall. He was a little bit between in terms of the Noah Gragson incident, where he was didn't steer into the fence, versus Hocevar's and Tyler Reddick's, where they were closer to the wall and resulted in much less of a serious impact there. But regardless, the result was the same, a 30th place finish for Bubba Wallace. Gragson with a very hard hit there in 33rd. He was struggling a bit more, but at least trying to finish on the lead lap, get some positive momentum going. It seemed like coming into this year, Gragson was going to have some challenges with a Petty GMS team, certainly compared to Ty Gibbs and a Joe Gibbs Racing effort. Didn't expect this gap to be quite this large, though. Gragson has been absolutely struggling, and even when he's had some great runs, like the one at Talladega, just again, one wrong move or one turn where it should or should not have happened has been the difference and dropped him well back in the order. But here, a 33rd place finish for Noah. And I was glad to see that he was looking forward to Sears Point this week. Of course, he inherited that win at the K&N West Series race a couple of years ago when Ryan Preece was black flagged under some very controversial circumstances there a couple of years ago. So hopefully he can get a good run out there. It'd be great to see in person. And that will definitely be our next trackside coverage this next weekend. One of the many storylines to certainly keep an eye on coming up there. But I'm just glad he's okay, so he can come back out there and actually challenge for that as well. Very much the same with our bottom 2 finishers here, Tyler Reddick and Carson Hocevar, being involved in separate brake rotor situations there. Hocevar was the first of those, which again, like a lot of these runs here, does not reflect at all how well that he was running here. And just been kind of working on that article towards the end of this race. Had plenty of time to, given how drawn out this afternoon turned out to be here for the race there. But Carson did a tremendous job out there. I almost feel like we need to have like some kind of a temperature gauge here to figure out if people like or hate him. Because it seems like it wasn't too long ago on this show we were talking about him and winning this first race of Texas and people complaining about the way he won it and then the wreck that happened there. And Nick Sanchez, probably should have won that Texas race there, but unfortunately things didn't play out that way, and a lot of torn sheet metal later. Hocevar finally pulls off his first victory. Of course, you think on the other flip side of this, where Hocevar gets this opportunity in the Cup Series car. A year ago, he broke his leg in that terrible wreck with Tyler Hill at the end of the Truck Series race, and then going into Sears Point when they had the truck race last year, won the pole, and then immediately spun off the track there. Daniel Suarez helped them out to get a good finish on that weekend there, and really dug deep. So he's had a little bit of both of these here. But especially, it seems like ever since he had those Xfinity runs with the Spire team, which undoubtedly has had some great equipment. It's basically another junior motorsports entry out there. And Spire Motorsports getting this team together certainly put together some great equipment for him. Nevertheless, he's had to drive it out there and get those top 10 finishes. He was scheduled to make his debut at Dover. That got changed to Darlington. And despite that change, he's still got a top 10, arguably running at an even more difficult track, which was very impressive. And then follow that up at Charlotte on a double-duty weekend again there with the Truck Series. Gets another top 10 out there in the middle of the night. An 8th place finish on that. So He comes into this Cup race with a lot of excitement, and it was good to hear again. I think some of that had been lost earlier this year, and understandably, he's been in his share of controversial incidents. I think it seems like we don't have any shortage of drivers that have a laundry list of situations these days, because the racecraft of all these series has changed so much, especially in the Cup Series. But in this one here, I mean, a very popular run. He was very fast in practice. I believe he was like 14th or 15th in that. Had a solid qualifying run out there. Got into the top 20 about 60 laps into the race. He was 16th. Also battling William Byron, much like Bubba Wallace was later. And then, yes, unfortunately, again, the situation with these steel brake rotors, and again, was illustrated. And I'll give Fox's credit where credit's due, to show the failure modality of these brakes and show how much damage is done to the rims. Certainly what we saw from Reddick's situation, that apparently, the straightaways are long enough that they cool down just enough that they immediately have to get hot again for those flat corners, and there's no banking to catch the cars. And then you just get a situation there like we've seen in the past with the past car at Pocono or Indianapolis back in the Gen 6 era there, that it just becomes too much, and then that brake rotor shatters and you are just completely along for the ride. And it's very fortunate that none of those incidents, even Gregson's, which was downright scary with how hard he hit the wall with the driver's side of the car, that none of those were more serious than they turned out to be there. So those are definitely things to bring up. But again, an unfortunate deal for Hocevar. I certainly hope he gets some more opportunities in Cup. Undoubtedly, he's going to get some more efforts in the Xfinity Series there, since it's still a Spire Motorsports team, at least in name, that has put him in the 77 car there. And, he's remaining as constant of a presence as ever in the Truck Series. He had a great run in the Truck Series race this weekend as well. Drove through a lot of adversity to still get in the top 5 there. And it's good to see. It's good to see people starting to really recognize this and anticipate his run out there. Probably a driver that was really breathing a sigh of relief on this would be Corey LaJoie, who was brought into a situation here that we've seen a lot of other drivers be in position. You think of Josh Berry, of course, being the more constant relief driver for when a Hendrick driver has problems. Of course, that was unworkable this week with the Xfinity Series over in Portland. Had to work out a different situation there. We haven't had drivers like Regan Smith and others that have relieved drivers like Jeff Gordon or Dale Jr. in the past that are now like broadcasters now. So you've had so much of a gap there that they had to arrange a different situation there. Obviously, the Spire connection with Hocevar, I'm sure, played a big role in why LaJoie's name was even thrown into the hat there of being the driver in there. But it was a difficult situation. I'll give as much credit as can be done there for LaJoie. I think it's certainly understandable to have great expectations for LaJoie at this Gateway race and say that, okay, well, look, now he's in top equipment. Now he's got a chance to really show what he can do. Very much similar to Jimmy Means driving for Tim Richmond's car for Hendrick back in the late 80s at Charlotte. But you got like one shot at this. Elliott's going to be back in that car for Sears Point, where he's one of the favorites to, take the whole thing home next week, and he very well may. But again, it's such a difficult track to make that happen. And I don't think it's contradictory to call attention to that, even with Hocevar running as well as he did in the Spire car. There's a lot of pressure on LaJoie for sure, and I'm sure a lot of pressure he put on himself. He seems to be, pretty calm and even-handed from what you see on like the podcast and everything. Again, had that situation at the start, tripped the kill switch there at the beginning. Fortunately, was saved by the first Reddick caution, so it didn't turn out to be a catastrophic situation. The team checked things over just to make sure nothing sideways was happening. Gateway is a tricky track. It's still new to the circuit. LaJoie himself did not get to turn that many laps on this track last year because he was last year's last place finisher after the engine failed about 70 laps into the race. Then on top of that, you have this situation where right when Hocevar's wreck happened, the power goes out at the track. You have this massive, I don't know how people were sending pictures. I was getting some great pictures from our buddy Michelle over on Twitter there. And thank you again, Michelle, for sharing your pictures of LaJoie and Briscoe going in and out of the garage area there. But I'm glad she was able to share those because it sounded like the whole system was kind of like the infrastructure just kind of crumbled around the Gateway track there. We have seen this before. We've had power outages at that track in the past. There was a Truck Series race. I believe Mario Gosselin was the last place finisher, or one of his trucks was, years ago, and there was an issue with like darkness and not being able to run the race there because of that. Again, and clearing up that it's not a Fox problem. Fox had plenty of their own problems in this broadcast, but the actual infrastructure of the area, just a power outage, internet outage, teams not having timing and scoring, not having data that could help. Undoubtedly, that was another problem for LaJoie. These teams are so dependent on that data these days. For better or for worse, you could try to do pen and paper and figure out fuel mileage and anything. Luckily, there were enough cautions that really wasn't a factor in this race at all. But trying to figure out setups or what the readings were off the digital dashboard in the car probably was another reason that Keselowski had as many problems as he did with the engine issue there. Although it seemed like the team kind of threw up their hands before the power outage actually happened there at the track. But undoubtedly that mustn't have helped LaJoie in his effort there too. He still shows 21st in the finishing order there. And all things considered, given the fact that this deal came together very quickly early in the week, it's hard to say. It would have been one thing if Hocevar finished the race, and if he finished ahead of LaJoie, undoubtedly LaJoie is going to get a lot of questions about this, and people have already, I'm seeing a lot of traffic on social media already questioning LaJoie's qualifications for getting a more higher tier ride than what he's had in Spire. And undoubtedly, Hocevar running as well as he did before this is going to at least raise some of that discussion. Again, and I think the fact that Hocevar fell out, there's going to be some offsetting focus on that because so many other drivers of different skill levels, different experience levels, all had that problem, whether you got newcomers like Gregson or drivers that have won races like Reddick and Bubba Wallace. It seemed like it was something that was just kind of a problem with the cars for the track or the setup for the track. But I still think LaJoie was under a very challenging set of circumstances there. And it sounded like there really wasn't much that the Hendrick team could do to really help him get the car handling any better. And the fact that LaJoie didn't have that much experience out there on top of that, this still being a very new track to the circuit. If he was in that car at Atlanta, say, for example, where Elliott's block on LaJoie not only kept LaJoie from winning the race, which would have been enough on its own, okay, they're racing for position, but ended up actually wrecking LaJoie's car, so he didn't even have the best car in their fleet. That was wonderful. Racing deal, but just still an unfortunate outcome. If it had played out there, maybe the result would have been very different. LaJoie certainly seemed to capitalize on super speedway runs, which I know is something very common about a lot of underdogs out there that are trying to kind of get some good runs out there. But he seems like he's consistently able to. Certainly was this year in the spring race at Atlanta, as much as I'm not a fan of what they've done to that track. Again, the fact that he got, 21st place finish out there, I mean, certainly could have been worse. Could have been better, but I think would have been too much to expect that he got a top 10 out of it. I don't know. I mean, that's going to be tricky there. I think you're definitely going to have people are going to say yes for sure, because, he's been very outspoken about trying to kind of receive these opportunities and kind of audition for better rides, and he's taken the long way there. He's been featured on more Last Car articles than I can count, and a lot of those were driving for small teams smaller than what he has now at Spire, whether it was the BK Racing or Go Fast Racing or that brief foray with the TriStar Motorsports effort that gave him the Last Car championship. Those have been teams that have really struggled, and really all three of them don't exist anymore, at least not in the Cup Series. Go Fast is still out there with late models and so forth. Now he's on to the Spire effort, which is the best one he's had. I think probably for him, I mean, it's probably still going to be a long path to get up there. But we've seen this before with guys like Alex Bowman. He had a very similar path through BK Racing. In fact, I think they were teammates at one point between LaJoie and Bowman there, I think in 2014. So again, it's just a matter of opportunities opening up. Certainly for Bowman, it was Dale Jr.'s injury and then Johnson's retirement, and then really kind of making that 48 car his own in the years since then, pulling off those surprising victories. For LaJoie, this wasn't going to be that situation because the 7, you're going to have Chase Elliott back. Even though, even with all the crazy stuff that's been going on, undoubtedly that's going to be a huge story at Sears Point this next week. But yeah, I mean, I'm not willing to say that this was proof positive of anything. I think there were too much. I think for LaJoie, at least, I think for Hocevar, it's certainly showing that he's capable of getting up there and getting at least a good start there with this Cup car. And I think he gained a lot of attention, as well he should have. But for LaJoie, I think the jury's out at the very least. But I wouldn't say that, he doesn't deserve another shot at this. Maybe he does, and again, maybe, he still brought the car back in one piece. He finished ahead of Bowman, who conked out in the final laps. We still don't know exactly what happened there. Kind of looked like he ran out of gas or had something catastrophic there happen at the end of the race there. Yeah, I still think a guy like LaJoie can have kind of a long path there to a top ride like Bowman had. It's just a matter of if he's going to have that opportunity. Hendrick right now seems to just be holding all the cards right now. And when, you could probably have all kinds of different people argue about who's the worst of that group. But even then, I think anyone that says whoever it is, they're probably not that far off from anybody else. So that's going to be kind of the way to look at that too. We'll certainly see. But just a very physical race, a very challenging race, very mechanically challenging race there for this. These flat tracks are not exactly something I would say would be in LaJoie's wheelhouse consistently. Again, super speedways, high bank tracks, he seems to do a bit better. Sometimes kind of sneaks in some good runs at other smaller tracks there too. But a different set of circumstances. But we'll see what happens with him back in the 7 car at Sears Point, where actually he was up there. I believe in 2021, he actually had a good run there, kind of got shuffled up to the front of the pack and was having a decent run there as well. So we'll find out what happens. Oh, goodness, we got 104 people here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Appreciate you guys checking out the show here this evening. Still talking about the Cup Series finish here. Kyle Busch, again, your race winner, pending, of course, results of post-race inspection. And Carson Hocevar, your last place finisher, who is already now, in spite of the fact that he's only made 3 Busch starts, Xfinity starts, and his first Cup start is already 1 Truck Series last place finish away from completing the last car Triple Crown. That will not happen this week because Truck Series is not running at Sears Point this year. But he is still the latest in position to be joining the other 42 drivers that have already completed that triple header. Brennan Poole is the most recent one at Darlington when he was last in both the Truck Series race and Cup race on the same weekend there. He had already finished last in Trucks, but not in Cup prior to that moment there. So that was kind of the turning point there for him. Again, it'll be exciting to see. I don't know if the Hocevar is going to run the Spire car there at Sears Point. Seems like they're kind of focusing on the ovals to kind of get his feet under him there. But we'll see. I'll be very excited to see the entry list this week and put together the entry list storylines for you guys coming up for the Sears Point week here as well. Chase Briscoe, we had another situation with a ruptured radiator. This one from the brake pieces that came off Hocevar's car. Punctured the radiator on Briscoe's car, and after having that massive penalty for that part on his car at Charlotte, the counterfeit part, according to NASCAR, ends up with a poor finish here in 34th. He did get around Reddick, but he was about 4 laps short of passing Gregson there at the finish. Even with the race going in extra laps there, it was not quite enough for him to gain one more spot at the end of the day there. And I didn't mention here as well, kind of skipped around a little bit, bad luck there for Austin Dillon and Ricky Stenhouse. Certainly, I don't blame both those drivers for being as frustrated as they were. Stenhouse, in particular, has had a really good run of races these last few weeks. Sears Point's not exactly his best track. I've interviewed him after finishing last in the 17 car, and then saw him in the 47 car a couple years ago have problems out there. But still, hopefully things kind of turn around for him. Some contact there from Cindric into Dillon and putting him into the 47 there, and just a racing deal. I don't think there's any comparison to what happened to Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin's situation at Charlotte. Obviously, emotions are still high from that, as well they should be. And again, I do stand corrected. I know on last week's show there, I was still thinking Keselowski had a role in it. But as you guys pointed out, and as Clint Boyer pointed out there, you see the SMT data and you see that overhead camera footage there. You can definitely tell that while Keselowski did make contact with Chase, it wasn't until after Chase veered left and into Hamlin there. So certainly to support the suspension that they did for Chase Elliott, at least to be consistent with the exact same circumstances that happened with the Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson one, short of an actual confrontation there in the infield, of course. But the initial incident was really the main focus of that, and I think that I applaud NASCAR for being consistent with that for sure, and doing it with the most popular driver. I think that sends a real message on that. I think that drivers can have personalities and be outspoken without right-rearing somebody into the outside wall. I was trying to think of other previous incidents where we've had that happen during a race, and it's resulted in a pretty catastrophic accident. You think of Carl Edwards sending Brad Keselowski flipping into the fence at Atlanta. You think of course, the Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano thing at Martinsville. You think of back in 2008, David Gilliland and Juan Montoya at Texas had an incident on the back straightaway. In all three of those cases, the driver that caused the accident, driver that got into the right rear of the other car, was parked for the rest of the race. The situation with Kenseth, of course, the car was already so destroyed he couldn't get back out there anyway, but the message was relayed that he was still going to be parked. So I think in the past that had been the response, but in this situation here where Elliott could have kept going in this race, but ultimately fell out of the race there, very much like the Bubba Wallace situation with Kyle Larson at Vegas. When they're wrecked out of the race, you can't park them, but you still got to send a message, and I think at that point there, much like Matt Kenseth when he was wrecked in 2015, when he wrecked Logano in 2015, when you couldn't park them for the race and have that be the penalty, I think a suspension is suitable there. So I'd even say it's consistent with the Kenseth one too, and fits in there. So I'll look for any kind of consistency you can find in NASCAR, because I know that it's sometimes hard to find, especially with penalties, and there's a lot of discussion with that, with the Briscoe penalty too. I think Dave Moody is right to be a bit outspoken there on that and say what is the future of these teams, innovating anything. I think NASCAR I'm kind of surprised this is a surprise now after 2022 and basically making this a spec car, and NASCAR coming down on Brad Keselowski right away at Daytona about even trying to make it easier to put the wheels on the car or whatever, and saying, like, don't mess with the car. Like, don't even do that. Don't even do things that are going to make it easier to work with the cars. Like, we don't want you touching anything. I don't get why there's surprise now. I guess it's just at the size of the penalty that Briscoe got. But it's like, oh, NASCAR said this is a counterfeit part. It wasn't a part that was from their shop. Wasn't one that they approved. I don't get why that's so surprising now. I think there should have been more uproar back last year with the Keselowski situation and say, well, wait a minute. I mean, are teams going to be able to do anything with this car? Or is it literally a spec car and it's got to be 100% on the nose? It seems like the teams have had plenty of notice about that. But teams are going to try to figure other things out. We've heard this with the Louvers situation. We've heard this with other things on that. I think it just seems like we're constantly having these situations where it's like, really? It's Homer asking about the what was it, that Quickie Mart scene where he meets the shaman on the top of the mountain, and he just keeps saying, wait, was he really the king of the Quickie Mart? It's like, you're really going to do this over and over again? You're going to use all three of your questions? Because these NASCAR teams are constantly like, we really can't do anything with the cars? Like, yes, you can't do anything with the cars. Well, we really can't put a little tape on the nose? No, you can't do anything with the cars. It's like, well, maybe if we make this part, you can't do anything with the cars. It's like, how many times do they have to be told this? Like, okay, like I get that these teams are always going to be, trying to kind of find a performance advantage, and as well they should. You still see, of course, these teams get very protective. Of course, if you're looking at, when they take the wheels off the cars and they don't, there's other stuff that they don't want to get seen. I'm glad that's still there. But inevitably, when NASCAR created this car and said, this is what you run, and it better be, A better fit into B, and B better be on C, it should have been immediately apparent to everybody. It's like, wait a minute, we can't innovate anything. how can we find a performance advantage? And we've heard Denny Hamlin be very outspoken on his podcast that the parity that has supposedly been the pursuit of this has made it so much harder for cars to even pass each other in the Cup Series, which has certainly been a role in the way we've seen this car drive and how it's been able to compete. So, now what they're able to work on, if anything, is such a small aspect of it. And it probably was going to be eventually get to this point at some point because, NASCAR has been clamping down more on more of this. You think about the old templates that used to be on the old cars where it was just over the top of the car, but you could stretch the car's length out. You could do the twisted sister thing and kind of get those cars to fit it. Then with the car tomorrow, it was a cage that could be dropped down. And now it's laser inspection. And even if you're just like the littlest bit off, none of this should be surprising. Maybe there's not that much that the teams could do to head this off. But we have reached that point. I think we just kind of jumped maybe another step really quickly here and now said, okay, well, now they can do basically nothing. Like they can put the car together and then hopefully the driver can get the rest of the way. And, we still see drivers like Kyle Larson on top of the pile here. It's not like it's suddenly created a situation where a team that couldn't perform at all is suddenly winning 5 races. That's not been the situation. I don't even know if that was really the goal. Because, teams are going to be, I think, just working that much harder to find whatever that is. And the big teams are still going to be able to accomplish it. But for this to be treated like this is a surprise or that this is the red alert, like this is the moment that has, completely changed things around, I'm going to wonder where you've been the last year and a half. And so it's inevitable that it was going to reach this point. And we've kind of been at this point since last year. So if that was the concern, then I think the team should have shared those concerns much earlier. Hopefully things get worked out. I'd like to see teams be able to innovate a bit more. Maybe NASCAR can loosen things up and say, okay, well, look, we want these to be spec parts, but maybe you're allowed to mess with this or that. Or maybe NASCAR acknowledging that some parts don't work that well, like they have done, where they've changed the crushability of the cars and made them, certainly made them safer in that sense. That absolutely needed to happen because Tyler Reddick getting rear-ended at Martinsville last year and having a concussion to the point where he couldn't see straight, where he couldn't drive the car, just normal bumping and banging out there. Clearly something had to be changed there. And perhaps that's where you need to actually have the compromise in between is, just NASCAR being more open to these teams, finding other things that can make the cars handle better. That's, because NASCAR is a sanctioning body, and they've created this car, but they're not the teams. There's always been this battle between them. It's the same reason that Smokey Yunick's not in the NASCAR Hall of Fame for all the innovations that he came up with. So, what they need to do is just find some kind of way to work together. And easier said than done, I'm sure. But at least say, like, look, how about there's a list of like 5 or 6 things that the teams can kind of work on, and that those are things that they can kind of mess with. And then maybe those things have a big or a small effect on it, but maybe that would be preferable rather than NASCAR having to like trace everything down to some little part in the underneath of these cars here and then slam some massive penalty on them. Maybe if you at least like work with that or something like that again, makes the car perform better or just perform safer or something like that, because NASCAR is not always going to have all the answers there. I mean, they haven't been in that situation with all of this. So that's what kind of needs to happen. It needs to kind of back off a little bit there. But yeah, again, it's going to take some time to kind of figure out that balance there. And I'm not sure what's going to really bring that about. If there should be some innovation out there because, yeah, I mean, even in Formula One, I mean, there's a massive difference between the top team out there and the small team out there. And they don't run a spec car necessarily. They got technical specifications they got to work with and everything and all that. But the best teams are the ones that figure it out the best. And, as much as I don't think there's a lot from Formula One that NASCAR should be aiming for because, it should still retain some of that, kind of shade tree mechanic aspect of the sport, even with owner drivers and things of that nature no longer being around. I think that allowing for some room for innovation it's within NASCAR's grasp. And, they could either keep going this way and just, say like, okay, well, you didn't do this right, or you didn't get this from us, or this or whatever. But maybe actually maybe taking that part and say, oh, wait, if we put this down there, maybe the car is going to handle better on short tracks. Maybe it's going to help with tire wear. Maybe the brakes aren't going to fail. Because all we're seeing in the meantime is, we've seen some races where nobody can pass, or it's very hard to pass, or we have situations where the car is failing in a spectacular way. Well, the teams are the ones that should be able to help NASCAR with that, because they're the ones that are basically road testing this car for the last year and a half. I had assumed that there had been more discussion on it, but it really seems like with these penalties that we've seen over these last couple of years, and the fact that they've stepped it up more and more, that's just not happening. So and that's there's always been the conflict with the with the sanctioning body and the teams. That's not gonna change. But they got to work together on this, because if there's anything. We already heard rumblings about this back when there was a discussion about the TV negotiations and the talking about the charter system and if they're going to make that permanent and so forth. And Denny Hamlin kind of downplayed that on his podcast, but that's still something to kind of look at too. So that's kind of where I am with that. But but we'll see where that all shakes out there in the meantime. So really, again, though, I think this weekend here with the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, I think we saw some tremendous racing out there for both series, especially the Xfinity Series. I think that was probably the race of the weekend there in Portland. We'll go ahead and jump right into that one, actually. We'll do this a little bit out of order, and we'll walk back to the Truck Series there. First and foremost, great to see a lot of the other competitors back over there. I almost said Norm Benning there, the back of the field there, the Xfinity Series. But of course, your last place finisher in the Xfinity race was Brennan Poole. Again, a little bit of a rules situation snafu there with that. We've seen this a couple times in the past. Joey Logano at Watkins Glen in 2018, Eric Almirola at Bristol in 2019. Car receives very minor damage, probably could fix it. During the repairs, they say, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's like a little thing here that we got to fix, and they'll immediately push him behind the wall there. But the problem is they're still on the crash clock. They're eliminated from the race. Now, apparently what we learned during the broadcast here, and I had to listen to it a couple times to understand it, during a standalone race where they don't have competitive pit stops, they don't have a timer on the crash clock. But the crash clock rule, the actual damaged vehicle policy, is still there, because within 3 laps, you still have to reach minimum speed, which means if you receive some damage in an incident and you enter pit road, that clock to complete 3 laps is basically started, even though you're not timed on doing repairs. So I guess conceivably, you could probably work within those 3 laps on like a road course, which is going to take a very long time, make those really minor repairs, go out there and try to reach minimum speed and keep going. At least that's the way I understood it from the way they were describing it. What happened in Brennan Poole's situation is he slid off the track in turn 11 and 12 there, got into the outside wall with the nose of the car, buckled the hood. Didn't seem like it was very serious damage, but he lost the brakes. In fact, they could smell brake fluid when he pulled in. And when he got down pit road, he just took a hard right at that first turn there and went into the garage area. And unfortunately, at that moment, they said DVP. Brennan's 6 car out, DVP, and that was it. That was the end of the race. Even though they went back there, I'm sure, to get some brake fluid and seal up the system and pump the brakes and all that, they couldn't do that. And as much as I don't like that rule, again, that's a discussion for another day. Under the letter of the rule, that was a proper result there. And I know the team took issue with that, and it stinks because, Brennan's a solid driver, and the JD Motorsports team needs to get some good runs. Thankfully, they had Garrett Smithley out there to climb up from the back of the field to finish in 24th there. But an unfortunate early end to their day as well. Sammy Smith was running in last there after the first lap there. Apparently had some kind of a situation with the broken gear shift in practice. Apparently something was still going there. It wasn't clear if it was still the gear shift or an electrical issue, but they did have that crew member climb through the right side window. Then he sped on pit road, had to come back in again, and lost a lap. Ultimately didn't get that. I don't think he got the lucky dog during the race there, but he did actually kind of gain a few spots there to finish in 30th. But it pretty much just kind of ruined his run. It's very unusual to see that at a road course. Usually get enough cautions to kind of allow things to play out that way. But finishes up in the 30th spot. Poole, Stephen Parsons, Mason Maggio, Parker Chase and Kyle Sieg rounding out your bottom 5 there due to a series of mechanical issues. Parsons' car stalled on the track. Maggio spun out there, was running almost in last place, and then had the transmission fail. Parker Chase with a tie rod issue and a rear gear failure on Kyle Sieg's unsponsored entry. All of them passed by Daniel Hemrick, who still managed to get back out there after his car caught on fire on the back straightaway there. Scary situation there. Luckily, he hopped out of the car quickly, but required a pretty long cleanup there around the scene there. Still got back out there. Not so luckily, it was Riley Herbst, who is, after a pretty solid start to the year, has continued to struggle ever since Darlington in that last place run of that beautiful Ken Block paint scheme there. Unfortunately, here, he blows an engine there, pulls off the track there, caught the grass on fire a little bit. It drops out in the 32nd spot. But much of the story there was among the drivers at the front of the field there. Thrilling battle between a lot of different drivers there. Sheldon Creed, in particular, getting the pole position out there, has been very good at road courses in particular, really stepped up his battle, his battle strategy out there and really kind of fighting back when he could. And there was no better example of it here. Him and John Hunter Nemechek were pretty much the show for a lot of this, them trading bumps and bangs and spinning each other out, and just a crazy deal out there. John Hunter is a very aggressive driver. I stopped short of saying he's a dirty driver. I think he's the straw that stirs the drink here a little bit. He's at least at the level of Ross Chastain for sure. But the battles we saw between the two of them, they're just bumping and banging and leaning on each other and all that, was extremely exciting. Unfortunately, both of them set up a situation where a driver like Cole Custer could slip through and get the lead. Justin Allgaier seemed like he was destined to pull off the win there at the end, but Custer, just like he did at the end of that one stage, where he kind of worked on the inside and got around him there, pulled off the victory. And I love that glorious shot there from the exit of pit road there to see Custer come down to the finish line. I thought that was a gorgeous shot there they did from the track. Our own Ben Schneider was at the track there this weekend. They had a great time out there. Glad he didn't have to deal with the rain that they had last year. Hopefully they had a good experience out there. Sounds like they did. The ARCA West race out there had a thrilling last couple of laps as well. So some good battles there. But, the Xfinity race out there. Again, I'm glad John Hunter Nemechek is out there. I like that he is that aggressive. I think that, I think he's still overlooked in the championship battle. I think he's a guy that they're still going to have to deal with at the end. I think he does have a bit of a chip on his shoulder because he's tried to reel in these truck championships, and maybe just, one mistake or another has kind of cost him those wins. And things haven't worked out for him in the Cup Series. He had that, he's driving for front row, didn't get a real shot, of having some good runs there. Unfortunately, things didn't shake out. But again, just keeps plugging away. And, again, he's, I think he's exciting to watch. And again, I think he gets too aggressive sometimes does cross the line, but I'm glad he's there for sure. But Cole Custer pulling off the win, what was definitely a wide open opportunity with no Cup Series regulars out there. None of the winners of what they said the last 14 or 15 road course races out there. I mean, massive opportunity for drivers. And on that respect, towards the end of the race here, I don't blame Parker Kligerman for the move he made at all. I thought going into that chicane, that seemed to be the only move that you could make to try to capitalize and pull off your first victory and try to punch your ticket, especially for the Big Machine Racing team coming off their second last place finish this year. I know they were looking for a strong run out there, and I expect Parker to be just as strong out there at Sears Point next week for the DoorDash 250. Gonna be. I thought it was the one race, as he mentioned. It was the move to try to win the race, and unfortunately, he ends up back in the 14th spot to finish. But you can't say he didn't go for it. He absolutely did. But unfortunately, he dropped back in the pack. Same thing with Allgaier and the other drivers that were kind of locked up there with him. Or I guess it was Creed that he was locked up with at the time. That dropped Creed kind of back into the clutches of John Hunter there at the very end of it. Other drivers that really showed that they were really going to stay in there the full distance and really kind of try to capitalize on a run and not let anything kind of get to them. Connor Mosack was very impressive. A career best 8th place finish out there for Sam Hunt's team. That team has really been on the rise. They had that double top 10 a little while ago. Yes, they got Toyota, at least Toyota chassis out there, and I'm sure those are very fast cars there compared to these others. I don't know how much support they get from Toyota compared to like Joe Gibbs or anything like that. But whatever it is, they had a great piece out there, and Mosack getting that 8th place run out there with the left front fender knocked off on the very first lap, I thought was very impressive. It was like an old school road course race out there. I think the Xfinity Series, I'm going to keep calling it the Busch Series, I guess, are still going to put on like the best show out there. They have the greatest road course package, I think, in all 3 series, even better than the Truck Series to an extent. As much as I enjoyed seeing the trucks fight through turn 11 last year. But I think that's certainly something to kind of look forward to there too. But Cole Custer wins over Justin Allgaier. Sam Mayer in 3rd after starting 36th on the grid out of 38 cars. Josh Berry in 4th. Austin Hill in 5th. Myatt Snyder in 6th. Sheldon Creed, Connor Mosack, Chandler Smith, and John Hunter Nemechek. Your top 10. Alex LeBay almost in the top 10 for the Mario Gosselin effort. A good rebound for him. Blaine Perkins in 15th in an unsponsored Our Motorsports car. Good to see. We're still seeing some good runs out of Parker Retzlaff out there. A little bit of fireworks at the end there. Not through the drivers that we would have expected after all the battles between Sheldon Creed and John Hunter Nemechek. In fact, the two of them seemed to kind of agree to disagree. Gave each other a fist bump there on pit road. But between Jeb Burton and looked like the folks over there at the Colleague Racing effort there, very surprising. Jeb did get routed there at the last couple of laps and spun off into the grass. But we've seen this from Jeb before. I mean, he's been very vocal about anybody that he perceives as spun him out or wronged him there. This was certainly another in that case there too. And certainly frustrating. I'm sure he's trying to get the best run he can. He ends up with a 25th place finish in this one, a ways behind his teammate Parker Retzlaff in 17th. But again, it'll be another interesting story, and we'll see if he gets a better run at Sears Point this next week here. Looking forward to all of that. Another one I got to give a shout out to, Brad Perez stepping in for Leland Honeyman. We talk about the challenge of Corey LaJoie stepping in for Chase Elliott. Imagine stepping into an Xfinity ride where you're basically wearing your driver's suit and you think you're just helping out the team. In this case here, Leland Honeyman with some food poisoning over the week. Certainly hope he's recovering well, and we'll see what his next race is going to be with the Alpha Prime effort. But Brad Perez gets an opportunity and hops behind the wheel. The number 43 has a very good run, much like Carson Hocevar, working his way into the top 20. By my calculations, at least what it looked like with the intervals, he was about 13th on the last lap there. Unfortunately, either got off course or somebody got into him. Still not exactly sure what the circumstances were, but unfortunately the result was the same. He gets into the tire barrier coming off the last corner, drops him back into the 28th spot there at the finish. Luckily, Brad's okay. He actually messaged me back pretty soon after the accident there, but I'm sure that's going to keep him hungry for this next week here, going into Sears Point, where he's going to drive for the Emerling Gase team, the number 53 car, and that time he's actually going to be entered in the race there. So we'll see on that. But yeah, really enjoyable. I really enjoyed that Xfinity race. I love, I think this Portland track is definitely one that I'd like to circle on the calendar here. Maybe we'll cover it one of these days. That'll be kind of a fun one to check out. I like that it's still right off Interstate 5 there. So same pathway up here from Northern California. But hopefully a little bit of an easier trip for a lot of these teams. Certainly the Alpha Prime team made a bit of news this week with all the issues that their haulers had getting out to the track from Charlotte. I believe all 3 or at least 2 of the different haulers there for the Alpha Prime team broke down in the Midwest. And kudos to NASCAR and the other teams for kind of helping out, bringing a dually down there to kind of get their equipment in late Thursday evening. But luckily all ready to go. And again, I think we're looking to have a pretty solid afternoon there between the 3 teams. Jeffrey Earnhardt ended up being the top finishing of the 3 cars after running around the last place spot at the beginning of the race, coming back to finish in the 19th spot there ahead of Leland Honeyman and Brad Perez in the 43. And then, of course, Dylan Lupton in the 44. Lupton expected to run that car again this week at Sears Point, and that'll be another story coming up here as well. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited. Always excited for NASCAR coming back to Sears Point. I think we had a great race last year, and certainly a great story with Daniel Suarez pulling off his first career victory. Surprising top 5 with Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell up there as well. And surprising struggles by Joe Gibbs Racing last year, where they were just completely out to lunch on strategy. But this year, without the stage cautions, it's going to be quite the battle, I think, in both these races. And people are going to have no choice but to really try to manage track position as well they can, and also try to figure out the best strategy. It's going to outsmart everybody else in the field. You might see some different faces up at the front of the pack there, and that'll be something to see as well. Kind of weaving in our Sears Point preview here into kind of our discussions from these races here, but they certainly go hand in hand. I imagine with a lot of these Xfinity teams, they're going to be running the same cars or from this race, or as best as they're able to piece them back together. It was very a physical race, but luckily not quite as messy as the rain race from last year. So I guess between the two, it's probably best to turn out this way. Was very interested in the story, I think Start and Park Cars shared on Twitter, that Brennan Poole was in fact driving the last car that Morgan Shepherd entered with his team Shepherd Racing Ventures at Darlington in 2020, the first race back after the pandemic break. Getting back out there and driving the number 89 car. I believe it was a car from JD Motorsports after Shepherd wrecked his own at Texas. But getting back out there and actually getting the car back to JD Motorsports and Brennan driving it. It's unfortunate that they didn't have much of a run out there in the race there, but still, I like that there's still that history of chassis. It's kind of like what you see in NASCAR Man's Under the Sheet Metal there for sure, in the discussion between these different series here at the same time. So we'll see what the story is. I think it's going to be very exciting here coming up this week. Truck Series race was a bit of a crash fest there, off and on, although we also had some pretty good battles up front. Congratulations to Grant Enfinger pulling off the victory. Certainly with his ARCA background, it's good to see him capitalize on that for these Midwest tracks here, and pull off a convincing victory over Christian Eckes. Although up to that point, you had certainly Ty Majeski and Jack Wood not too happy after the incident that eliminated the both of them and dropped them back in the lineup there. Certainly for Majeski, with the damage that was suffered to his truck there at the very end, dropping it back to the 30th spot. But again, a pretty competitive race there too. Raja Karuth was going to be, it was starting in last place there, stoved in the nose at the very beginning of the event there with an incident that happened on the back straightaway. Brett Holmes and Clay Greenfield were involved. Greenfield was back at the track there for the first time since Daytona when he drove for Cook Racing Enterprises, this now under the GK Racing banner, now doing kind of a colleague effort where they're working with the actual team sponsor representatives and starting a team that way. Hopefully that helps out for Greenfield, as it has certainly for colleague in the time since then with the leaf filter folks and everything. But unfortunately, in this case here, it was a very short day. Greenfield lost control trying to miss Brett Holmes there on the back straightaway, ended up hitting the inside wall. Truck wouldn't drive straight after that, and he ends up out of the race. I thought it was really nice that he ran the 95, changed it over from the 84 for the Cook Racing team, and this was deliberately an honor to Earl Sadler of the Sadler Brothers team, which is the team that I featured in not only the Gary Bradbury video, but also the Bob Schacht video recently here. So if you want to hear more about that team, definitely check out those videos on this channel here after the show tonight. But Clay Greenfield, unfortunately, the Backyard Blue Pools truck, not completing a lap of the race, joining Ed Jones at the Circuit of the Americas earlier this year for Randy Young's team. It's the only two Truck Series efforts to not complete a lap of a Truck Series race earlier this year. Both of them last place finishers, and in this case here, the debut of a new team, or at least some kind of reincorporation, I assume, of the 84, since they brought down the exact same hauler from the Cook Racing effort there on that. So Greenfield, your last place finisher. Dean Thompson, again, talk about an up and down effort there for different drivers. In this case here, Thompson with an engine failure after a slip belt, dropped him back to the 34th spot. Connor Jones in the 33rd spot there has been a little bit of a dart without feathers these last couple starts. Very early in his career, though. He definitely kind of hit everything but the jackpot at North Wilkesboro And in this case here, a very hard hit there in the 33rd spot, perhaps foreshadowing a little bit on the brake issues we've had in the Cup Series today, although very different setup for the Truck Series guys out there. And gals, of course, Haley Deegan in the 32nd spot had a very hard hit of her own out there. The 13 truck, good to see her get back out of that. And Stephen Malozzi sold his Dodge Charger to get some rides there in the Truck Series for the Rion brothers. Certainly, committed as he is to trying to get as many starts as he can. Appreciated him being a supporter of the site there, although I'm sure he absolutely did not want to finish last at Martinsville there with the electrical issues that he had out there in the jumped battery. But I thought that team showed a lot of pluck getting back out there, and I appreciated him clarifying the details about what happened out there. It sounded like it was a battery change, but this time it was a battery jump. Unfortunately, that ended up carrying over into this race itself. Steven was understandably upset over the radio when the truck broke down. Battery seemed to be losing power there, and it basically stranded him out on the track. Turns out that it was a faulty wire to the battery, which it sounds like either wasn't properly fixed after Martinsville, or they lost another wire, maybe because of the rain. You could have had a situation there. Anything's possible. But unfortunately, it was the same situation here. And in this case, lost some laps there getting the wire replaced and getting him back out. But he finished the race under power, showed some good resolve there. I believe he was 16 laps down at the end of this one, but finishing back in the 31st spot. Other drivers further up the rankings there, Zane Smith. Old High Lane Zane looked very good out there in the 38 truck. Unfortunately, wasn't meant to be there after incidents dropped him back in the lineup there after leading 32 laps back in the 20th spot. Bailey Curry was kind of hoping that he would have a good run out there after he ran so well for the Nice team in Atlanta earlier this year. Unfortunately, this really wasn't the case this time around. Again, much like Corey LaJoie and talking about drivers running well on certain tracks, Curry back in the 17th spot on this one. But Raja Karuth, great effort for him, rebounding to finish in 15th with the whole nose of his truck taped up after that first lap incident. I thought that was a fine recovery. He continues to be, especially with that great run he had at Darlington, one of the guys to watch. And somebody who really turned things around in his season this year has to be Daniel Dye. Your heart has to break for him there after he was running as high as second there in the race, seemed to be on his way to getting at least a top 5, if not a runner-up finish. Would have been massive there for the GMS effort, especially if he could finish behind his teammate there, Grant Enfinger. Unfortunately, wasn't meant to be. Bad pit stop towards the end of the race, dropped him back to about the 18th spot. He still climbed up and finished 11th, but got to give a shout-out to Daniel Dye there. Great effort for him there. I believe another track from the ARCA series, and probably why we saw some of these guys with ARCA experience, even very young drivers like him, being able to kind of capitalize on that as well. Speaking of ARCA, we have to certainly talk about Jesse Love stepping into Corey Heim's truck there after Heim was ill this week. Yet another person we got to give a shout out to. Certainly hope he's feeling better there and before the Truck Series comes back at Nashville in a couple weeks here. But Jesse Love getting in the number 11 truck, opening the number 1 for Tony Breidinger to come back out there. Tony did a solid job there in 24th, finishing a couple laps down in this one. But Jesse Love getting a top 10 in his first ever Truck Series start as a relief driver on top of it there. Fine job by him and the Tricon Garage effort. Certainly it's a team that's capable of getting in the top 10. I guess at this side, you can certainly look at the runner-up finish at the number 11 had last week in Charlotte. But again, tremendous effort there for a driver, first start in any of the series. You talk about Carson Hocevar in the Cup race earlier today. I mean, here's a guy that didn't have any starts in any of the series there outside of ARCA. And then the fact that he's won, 3 straight ARCA races coming into this and pulls off the great run there has to put him among the other drivers that you got to keep an eye on here these next few years. Stuart Friesen, glad to see him get a good run. It seems like it's been forever since he's had a solid finish. Was up there at Darlington and got shuffled back. But good to see him get a good run out there, and Eckes continuing a fine start to the year for him with a McNally team there in the second spot. Was kind of thinking Nick Sanchez is going to be more of a factor. Didn't lead a lap of that race, finishing back in the 8th spot there. But hopefully his day will still be coming here, certainly after, again, talking about that great run he had at Texas not too long ago there at the same time. All righty. Oh, goodness. We still got 76 people in here. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Let me jump into the super chats here. I saw a couple of these here at the same time, but thank you very much on this. First of all, Beast of Metal on yours. If Chase had waited till after the race and made Denny feel very uncomfortable in his pants with his foot, that controversy wouldn't exist. On the other hand, Chase got to avoid cringing at Mikey this week. So, yeah, that's certainly something you can look at there at the same time. Yeah, thank you, Beast of Metal, there for sure. Yeah, I mean, certainly things would have played out differently if the drivers had handled it differently. If you think about, what was it, Kevin Harvick and Chase Elliott a couple of years ago at Bristol and the argument they had, that didn't come to blows, but of course it got a lot of attention there at the same time, as understandably it would have. Yeah, that was definitely something else to kind of look at there at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would have played out the same. Then again, you got to throw in the social media factor because nothing seems to happen in a vacuum. Like everything's out there. And especially for these drivers that get so much focus on them already. We got, I think that it probably would have blown up just as much. I'm not entirely surprised that Hamlin was getting booed in the driver introductions. Certainly the Chase Elliott fans aren't happy to not have their driver out there. If they're buying tickets and going out to see this race and all that. I'm not sure if Gateway is the biggest stronghold of Chase Elliott fans, but you don't get to be the most popular driver without having a strong fan base anywhere. Again, and it doesn't mean that Denny wasn't 100% in the right. Yeah, he got taken out at a very scary accident that happened at the same track that Blaze Alexander was killed in. The guy's door bumper clear, was very right to point that out. Although, of course, in the case of Kerry Earnhardt and Blaze Alexander, it was completely just a racing deal. They were just racing for the lead, and unfortunately just some contact was made. Then the result turned out to be what it was, which I think is even more condemning on Chase Elliott there for aggressively going into Denny Hamlin and causing that wreck. Yes, we have the Hans device and the safer barrier and a car that's now crushable more than it was last year. Talking about that wreck, if it happened last year, you don't really want to even think about it. But that's another thing you can kind of look at there at the same time. So yeah, Beast of Metal, I agree to an extent. I think you probably, but that story would have come out. I mean, I'm thinking if social media existed when Jimmy Spencer punched Kurt Busch in the face, we would have never heard the end of it. There would have been so many memes. There would have been all this other stuff out there. But if it happened in 2023 instead of 2003, you would have had a very different circumstance. So I don't know. As to what kind of suspensions or how NASCAR would have handled it. I think that's really more the question. Would it have been a suspension? Would have they suspended both of them? I don't know. But it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, I think, for sure. Beast of Metal, thank you for your other super chat here as well. Also, I like how the next gen is sold as a cost-saving measure while the money not being spent on R&D is funneled into Rob Ponzi's pockets instead. Your words, not mine. Yes, again, thank you for the super chat there for sure. Yeah, I mean, if it's a cost-saving measure, and I guess NASCAR is being this stringent on the restrictions to fixing up the car, that they say, okay, well, look, just get the parts from us, and that's it. You don't spend all this money on this. They don't want you spending money here or there. But inevitably, if you have a bigger team and they have more resources, they're going to try to figure out some competitive advantage. Because at the end of the day, they're not just friends out there messing around. This isn't just some show. At least it shouldn't be, not strictly speaking. They're competitors. They're trying to beat each other. And that's going to be the difference there. And I don't think that's going to really, to really change there. But yeah, I mean, it does say, yeah, I mean, if it's supposed to be a cost-saving measure, I think there's a lot of questions that bear asking. Why is it just the 36 chartered efforts? Why have we still not heard about some of these other open teams that were trying to come in there? And maybe some of them were kind of, a real leap to try to get out there, but maybe not for others. I'm still curious about, hopefully we get the Three Friends racing team out there that we heard we were going to get out. I was really hoping they'd come out for Sears Point, since they were really interested in doing an event in California. They didn't do the Clash, and they didn't do Fontana. We haven't had the entry list yet, but I haven't heard anything one way or the other about what's happening on that end. Yeah, I think that's another thing that you can look at from how NASCAR is. What's everyone's intentions? And, you know, again, would loosening things up a little bit and allowing the teams to innovate certain things, with NASCAR loosening some of that grasp, maybe improve competition. I mean, if they could work with him to improve competition, it would be helpful. But I mean, again, I guess I don't know how much of it is still what Tony Stewart discovered before and said that, you know, Stewart's saying, well, we should do A, B, and C. And then NASCAR saying, well, that's exactly the opposite of what we want to do. You're not going to be able to reconcile that. I'd like to think that we're still not at that point. But I don't know. It just seems like everything's so cloak and dagger with this car that we don't really get to figure out. We were figuring out all these failure modalities when something happens. We're only getting a glimpse of the door foam or the brakes or how even just not till this year, really understanding how these rims fail when the wheel nut's not secure, because like how it just turns into a can opener and carves that rim in half and it just flies right off. That should have been made clear way earlier. But I think that's kind of, that's going probably a little far from your original point there, Beast of Metal. But I take your point though, for sure. Michael Jensen, thank you for your super chat as well. I have no sympathy for the teams because the owners asked NASCAR to make a spec car to save money. They can't now complain that they have a spec car. Well, that's a valid point. That's a very valid point. And I think, and again, maybe this is, it's hard to tell. Maybe this is more a media concern versus a team concern, because everything, I get or what everybody else hears is going to be from, it's going to be hearsay. You're going to be hearing it from other people and all that. So is this just something that we're seeing that maybe, that it seems like the teams are in a corner and again, like Dave Moody said when he was saying that, okay, this is a turning point and these teams are getting, just these massive penalties thrown at them. And, it's going to just completely squash any innovation at all. Like, are these guys just literally putting together Lego sets, building these really expensive cars, and, then, the car gets tore up, fix it back up, send it back out, or scrap this one and bring another one in, and then you got, your 7 cars that you still have, and that's it. Yeah, I mean, but I share your concern, Michael, because yeah, it does make me wonder if this is a team concern. I go back to my point. It's like, yeah, where have they been the last year and a half? It's like, wait, we can't do this, or not being able to change the car means we can't change the car. It's like, yeah, like, where's the mystery? Like, I mean, I know that NASCAR could be a little hard to kind of decipher what their thinking is sometimes or what their strategy is, but I think they've been pretty unambiguous when it comes to this car. I mean, it gets to the point where pieces of tape can take away a win, like we saw with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin last year, a win and a second place finisher. I think there's a lot you can look at there. So I don't know, but you raise a point though. The teams had a role in creating the situation, both from getting so clever and so expensive with their innovations as NASCAR has tightened their attention and tightened their focus that much more, limited that much more. I mean, they kind of played hand in hand in this situation where, it's become, so the list of what you can innovate is so small. But, again, yeah, if the teams were the ones that just said, okay, well, look, let's just kind of skip doing all this and just go to a spec car, and then they can't fix anything on it, then yeah, they only have themselves to blame for it. And now they've given over. It's kind of like with NASCAR and the charter system. They're going to have to face the same problem here too. And I'm sure they lit up a lot of concerns there from that side of the aisle with the whole thing about them not wanting to make the charters permanent. Because now I still remark at how much power they gave up by doing that. That now they can't even structure the starting grid of their own races. Whether, it used to be you had like 32 cars at a short track or 36, and then you had 43 at the bigger tracks, and then they standardized it to 43 cars in 1998, and they had that for so many years. In good times and bad, you would have like maybe, in really good times like 2001, you'd have 45 full-time people, and you'd be sending home fully funded cars. And then in lean times like 2004 or 2009, you're going to have starting parks or field fillers out there. But you're still going to have that large of a field out there. But now they've given up that control. And, you have spots. I mean, again, this is why I make a point out of it in every single one of my entry list storylines about how many spots are just left out there that aren't claimed. That if somebody just entered an open car, they would be in the race. So, for example, we had 4 open spots today. We could have had a 40-car field in this race today, but we didn't. And I know there's a lot of reasons for that, stemming from, again, I think this kind of goes back to Beast of Metal's point there about this being a cost-saving measure. It's like, for who? It's still not profitable to run an open car out there. I mean, you've seen Carl Long's team scale back on that, and now they're having even more trouble even in the Xfinity Series now, just even qualifying for races, which has been a difficult situation. But you have a situation where you have just 36 Cup cars out there. It's very hard for teams to break into the sport, very hard for teams to develop talent, very hard for a driver. I mean, look at all the pieces that had to move for Carson Hocevar to get an opportunity in a Cup Series ride for one race in this one. It's the inflexibility of this for something that was never this inflexible. Even in the top 35 rule, you would still have teams outside the top 35 trying to get up to that point, or trying to build a program, or buy each other's owner points, or pick up each other's sponsors, or merge, or like a Gin Racing situation. They would have all kinds of options at their display. But a team only has their cars. Like the cars aren't worth anything. Like the property that they own isn't worth something, that they can't cash that out. It's like, well, look, if you're getting into racing, you're trying to develop a long-term thing, ideally. But a lot of times, yeah, it just, if a team closes down, you're gonna have to, you sell the property, you sell the team, you sell the assets. It's the same thing as if you started a restaurant, if you started anything else there. It's a lot more money at stake. Certainly, it's a much larger sale when it happens. Absolutely, but I don't get the idea of trying to guarantee something else, especially when you're replacing a free market situation where the best teams are going to stay in there. And, a Hendrick Motorsports isn't going to go bankrupt. A Joe Gibbs racing team isn't going to go bankrupt. They're going to figure out a way to stay in business. It's the smaller teams out there that are paying the price for it, and they can't break back in. They're excluded from it. And that's the situation there. And so they can't be, if you can say, oh, somebody's going to earn a charter. Who's going to earn a charter now? You don't even have full-time open teams anymore, because that's been scaled out. So it's absurd what was given up for all this. And yeah, now that we're surprised that NASCAR is saying, like, I mean, the one card, I guess, in their deck that they still had is like, well, we didn't make the charters permanent. It's like, well, now you've made them so entrenched, you're going to have a hard time dynamiting that system out of it. It's just not going to happen. And that's going to be a very tough battle for them to fight. And it's going to be a real problem. They're either going to, if they concede to having permanent charters, you may as well just get rid of open teams, because they're just not even, I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, it's not like it's not like the NFL where, okay, maybe I don't want to pick too much on somebody's team or anything. So I'll pick a good team. Say the New England Patriots have 3 losing seasons in a row or something like that, and maybe they're further back in the rankings. Now they're forced to sell their place in the NFL to somebody else, and then the Patriots don't exist anymore. Now they're rebranded as somebody completely else. And, it's like, okay, is that better? That's a system dependent on failure. Like, okay, nowadays, I mean, yeah, that's not the way that would happen. Now, I mean, I guess I don't follow football that closely. Obviously, there's been other teams where we have had that happen, where, a team, you ask anybody that's a Baltimore fan, or, certainly is going to be looking at that. But I don't like that they allowed a system based on failure instead of a system based on success, that you're rewarded for being more consistent, that you're rewarded for putting forth a program that could be competitive, that, you get sponsorship and you get more exposure, you get more TV time, and all that's worth something. So I don't know. It's gonna be a big situation, and it's another thing, much like with this deal with the next gen car, that's gonna be hard to bring up there at the same time. Who knows how it's gonna shake out. One thing I've danced around a bit on all 3 of these here is certainly the broadcast portion of the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series races. On the Cup Series side, I liked Kenny Wallace in the booth. I thought he was entertaining. I thought him and Boyer was a little bit much, but that's not Kenny's fault. That's just, it's a lot of energy in one space and all that, and Michael Waltrip on top of it. That's a lot, but that's not, that's not Kenny's fault, certainly. It was nice to hear from him again. It was cool to see Rusty Wallace back out there with Midnight. I didn't realize Rusty was going to be a part of it, too. I'm glad that he was, and I'm glad they got that in there before the lightning hold. That was certainly good. I mean, we haven't really talked about that, but that ended up making this day certainly a bit longer than I think everybody anticipated. Again, Cup broadcast I think was fine. I mean, it wasn't any different, really, than other Cup ones in the past. Mike Joy is still the best one in the booth there. There's still too much abstract stuff that's going on where they'll say, oh, wow, look at this, instead of saying, oh, this is the race for ninth place, and it's between this driver and this driver, or you're on board with this guy, looking back at this guy. There was less of that. It's like, wow, look, here's a whole lot of cars. It's like, well, I could have told you that. Anybody could have. Like, just actually commentate. There's a little bit more involved there. And then I loved the Xfinity race too, where I guess they were in Charlotte, or whether or not they were, I mean, whether they were in Charlotte or not broadcasting this race, I'm sure logistically it's challenging for that. But it really was, and I called it this, and I stand by it. I don't get why it was just a laughing competition among these broadcasters. They're just laughing. Like, all this crazy racing is happening. Best race of the weekend. You got guys, you got everything that it seems like a prototypical NASCAR race would have. You got drivers that are upset at each other and bumping into each other and knocking each other into the grass, and you got guys that are outperforming in their equipment. You got other guys that are struggling that you'd expect to be up there. You got all kinds of storylines, and they're just up there just laughing through the whole thing. And I got to comment on this, and I'm sorry to this person, but I'm still going to call it out. It's like saying, oh, are you kidding? Like, what's the problem with them having a good time? It's like, what's the problem? Like, I get it. It's sports. It's a leisure activity, but we, the viewers, we're the ones that are supposed to be having a good time. And I get that, broadcasting isn't supposed to be treated like, a super serious situation. We're not commenting on like, a public funeral or something like that. But at the same time, I mean, think about if you're, you got firefighters coming to your house, and your house is on fire, and you got firefighters coming there, and they're just laughing and messing around, and then they're just like, whatever, and they're doing that, and they're taking their sweet time hooking up the hoses. You'd be upset, wouldn't you? And I know that sounds like a stretch, but, there's some place for professionalism. I mean, for even if it's a leisure activity, somebody has to be professional. You can't have it be do as you feel day. I think this is like Simpsons reference night. You can't have it be a situation like that. It's like, well, I didn't feel like hooking the Ferris wheel up, and then it's rolling down the street. That's the situation. That's the problem I have with it. And again, I'm not saying it has to be morose. Again, nobody understands like a scale of anything anymore. There's no sense of proportion to anything anymore, especially on social media. And maybe it's not the best place to express it, but it's the only place I really have to do it. And I'm going to keep saying it. But you at least get it to a level of what Lee Diffie and his group did at the Indy 500. You don't have to just treat it like, again, the end of Apollo 13 when somebody goes purple in Sector 2 in a Formula 1 race, but at least get it to a point where when something happens, when the leader spins out, say something about it. Don't be like, oh, he spins him out. It's like, no. Like, contextualize it. Show me that you're invested, because when I hear, again, Denny Hamlin pointed this out. He hasn't gone full bore into it on his podcast yet, and I'm waiting for him to do it because he keeps broaching it every once in a while. It's like, I loved watching the Indy 500, but then I listen to our broadcast and they just kind of sound monotone. I was like, yes, keep saying it because, it's not being understood enough. I don't know why it's not being, this isn't catching on as much. I guess you got to be happy with what you have. I understand that to an extent, but that doesn't mean it can't be better. But that's kind of a different situation with that. So yeah. And yeah, the radio broadcasters are better than TV. Al, you're absolutely right. They really do. Yeah, do it like that. And I don't believe it's a redundancy. See, this is the other thing too. It's not like everybody's like, oh, if you don't like the TV broadcast, listen to the radio. And I'm not saying you're saying this, but again, I think that there's something very special with a TV broadcast because you have the visuals to work with. In radio, yeah, you got to paint the picture in people's mind, and so it's a different skill. But what's great with the TV broadcast is you can use the image to describe what you're saying. Sometimes the images do fill the gaps, and you can do that. So you don't have to literally word for word describe everything and just do a radio broadcast over it. In fact, if you listen to a radio broadcast while watching the TV broadcast, sometimes it's a little bit redundant. But there's other times where, you watch like the stuff from 500 Days, and you watch like how they're describing the end of that Atlanta race. And, you could try to like bring these other statistics up, and what you're seeing is incredible. That Jeff Gordon's catching Kevin Harvick at the end. But you have some, there's a little bit more creativity, I think, would be involved. I think you could argue to illustrate, to provide greater context for what you are seeing in the moment. And that could really kind of, just really bring that home. And I think the best broadcast, again, an okay broadcast doesn't take anything away from a race. A bad broadcast distracts from it, which is, again, the laughing, the guffawing, all that stuff. But a good broadcast, a great broadcast, it adds to it. It enhances it. It's the through goes Hamilton moment in Formula One. I'm not even a Formula One fan. That still sticks in my mind as a real positive example of it. That's what needs to be happening. And I'm so glad to be at the track this week, so I don't have to listen to all this stuff for the Xfinity race or the Cup race. That's going to be great. I hope to do a lot more races in person, not just to bring you guys more coverage, but to allow for that too. So, I'm very excited that Fox is going to be wrapping up their portion of the schedule. I think this weekend, this Xfinity race this week at Portland in particular was easily the best race of the weekend. It was one of the best road course races I've seen the last couple of years. I get when Mark Martin says that we're having fantastic racing now, but again, it's got to be seen. And I don't believe in saying, oh well, okay, it's just just listen to the radio instead, or make sure you go to all the races. That's not practical for everyone. And there's different factors at play, and it shouldn't be in that sense. So, because at the end of the day, the TV broadcast, and I hammer this, I think every week, but I'm going to say it again, it's the best advertising for the sport is the race broadcast itself. You don't have to make some ad and say, we are NASCAR, we're this or we're that. Nobody cares. It's show the race, have the thing where, that's the best part of it, and we just got to get back to that point. And if it's going to happen during, whether we're going to streaming or different networks come in or whatever, we'll see. But it's got to happen. It's got to happen because Formula One has made big strides with their series. And I know NASCAR did that too with the Chase of the Championship show. And that was really good. And it had some good moments. That we've seen some stuff on Netflix. They're starting to kind of figure it out and kind of gain that ground. But we can't take anything for granted. We as in anybody invested in NASCAR. NASCAR's been the top motorsport in the U.S. It still is with the ratings. But that can't last forever. And IndyCar's catching up. You're hearing about what's been said about IndyCar versus Formula One drivers, and there's still that rivalry there. They put on a great show today. I think NASCAR should be very concerned, especially after this, where you had all those lightning holds, and nothing against lightning holds. It absolutely had to happen for safety. But it was NASCAR. Part of the problem for them is they can't buy a break when it comes to weather. They seem to just have the worst weather at the worst time whenever they come out. And it's been increasingly a problem these last couple of years. But yeah, they responded exactly how they had to with the lightning hold there for Gateway. But unfortunately, it was exactly the same time that the IndyCar race was starting in Detroit, and they were putting on a great show with few wrecks. I mean, Callum Ilott got in that wreck at the beginning, but they put on a great show out there. There's probably a lot of NASCAR viewers like myself that were watching it at the same time. I just don't want the sport resting on its laurels. And I feel like from the broadcast approach to the way they stage the cameras and all that, and there's a lot of hardworking people behind the scenes, but I think they almost have like I hope there's certain people, whether they're the producer that's in charge of pointing the camera somplace or, directing the people in the booth to talk about certain subjects or whatever the thing is, wherever the gap is, there's some connection that's missing. Just trace it, just run it to ground and figure out what it is and tighten that up. Because again, I don't think it's a big issue. I think it's at best, at worst, really, a series of small issues. And that's what's so frustrating to me, because I think they could just do it. There's probably a whole supercut you could make of me saying that from so many times that I've said it, but I'll say it again. Especially as we're coming up here at the end of Fox's schedule here too. So, yeah. And especially, yeah, we got a race here where you have all these brake failures, you have these hard hits and stuff. I didn't mention this a while back at Talladega, but I think another measure of the professionalism in the booth, and this happened with Xfinity, so I'm afraid I got to mention it with Adam Alexander and in that group that they had over there. When Blaine Perkins had that big wreck, they just cut to commercial. Now, that's not always an option. I would think that a broadcast would have the professionalism to stay with the story as it's unfolding and bring people into it. Much like, again, I think even when we had that terrifying situation with Damar Hamlin in that Bills game earlier this year, and there were other, commercials that broke that up, but when it happened and they came back, Joe Buck stayed with the story. And as critical as I've been of Joe Buck, I thought he handled that supremely well. The other commentators that were there under a very difficult circumstance. And thankfully, Blaine Perkins' wreck was nowhere near as serious as this turned out to be. But the fact that they couldn't even handle that situation and just, okay, don't show the replay, but just, kind of try to figure out what's happening, talk with your pit reporters and kind of do that. The fact that they had to go to commercial instead, whether that was a production choice or a talent choice or I don't know what it was, I didn't like that, because I would have liked them to stay with it and try to figure out what's happening there. And I know they're doing that in the commercial break, but I think that's another element of professionalism, because you're commentating on a dangerous sport, a very dangerous activity, and it's very possible that something something like that could happen right in front of you, and you just can't just clam up. You got to say something. And that's why it's an exceptional skill, and it requires exceptional people to do it. And I'd like to think Adam Alexander could have done it in that case. I'd like to think that he wasn't a part of why they went to commercial in that particular situation. I think he's capable of it. He certainly knows who these drivers are. I think he does his homework very well. I may not like his play-by-play, much like Joe Buck, but I think he could have gotten to that moment, and I think that would have been better also, showing some understanding for what was happening there. So I just feel like, again, there's this aspect of it where either, we see sometimes that, I talked about this at the Indianapolis road course a couple of years ago, where they get very casual about wrecks, like, oh, what was your favorite part of the wreck kind of moments. But then when something serious does happen, it's just like they don't know what to do. They just freeze. That's not good. That's not good. That should be viewed as a bad thing. So, and unfortunately, you can't really train for that. You can't prepare for that. You just hope that in the moment they can do that. Again, thankfully, the Blaine Perkins thing was nowhere near as serious as the Damar Hamlin thing. And thankfully, Damar Hamlin's thing turned out to have a positive ending for what we've heard certainly since then. So I don't know exactly where I'm coming from on this, but again, I think it's another aspect of professionalism. And I don't like, and it's why I do recoil when I think they're just, you should have fun broadcasting it. I'm sure Howard Cosell and Jim McKay and Bob Jenkins and all the others had a blast in the booth, but they had a blast doing it well. They had a great time doing it the way it should have been done. They had a great time sharing the story and bringing this stuff to fans. Barney Hall, Eli Gold, all these other ones. There's such a thing as being taking pride in your work and enjoying doing it. It should be something you enjoy. If you don't enjoy doing it, why do it? But I'll tell you what, I take it personal, because during my work week, when I do my day job, I have to take it very seriously. I can't mess around. I can't have a fun time with it. We deal with a lot of people in our job that, they're counting on us to provide a service. I won't go too specific into it, but it's got to be done right. If I'm goofing around, if I'm messing around on the phone or something with a client or something like that, I'm out of there. That can't happen. And excuse me, but I'm going to hold that same standard of the broadcasters. I really do. And I think that's why it aggravates me so much on the weekend. Because again, it could be done so much better and it would help so much more. And I don't think I'm alone on that. I think a lot of people in their jobs and what they do during the week, can share in that too. So, I don't want to get too dark on this, but that's probably where I'm just going to leave it there on that. Yeah, so I'll go on from there. So big thing this week, moving forward from there is, of course, the Sears Point weekend. And this is going to be tremendous. This is going to be our first trackside coverage since Fontana. Hopefully the weather is going to be way better than what we had back in February earlier this year at Fontana when we had the snow. The weather here has been good. We're up at NASCAR headquarters. We're about 2 hours from the Sonoma Raceway, and no doubt the teams from the Xfinity Series are working their way back down from Portland. And then the Cup Series and not Truck Series, just the Cup Series, of course, from St. Louis traveling west here, and hopefully they have a more uneventful trip here than some of the Xfinity Series teams came out. Be very excited to see what the entry list is going to be coming up here in just a little bit. So we'll be working on that this Thursday. I'm going to be covering the trackside action all 3 days, which will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll have the ARCA West Series action out there. I don't do as much coverage for that series there, but we'll do some pictures and some stuff from there on that. Then, of course, the big focus is going to be on the Xfinity Series and the DoorDash 250 on Saturday, and Sundays running at the Toyota Save Mart 350 for the Cup Series. I have ordered the door magnet for those of you in the patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. I'm expecting that to be in either tomorrow or Tuesday, so I'll reveal that. Unfortunately, I don't have it here on the show tonight to show you, but those of you who are in the Patreon $1 level and up, you'll be able to see that. Anybody whose name is not currently on there, we'll definitely make sure to add that on there at the same time, so we'll certainly find out. It's the weather here has been pretty good. We've had, knock wood, we'll see. We got another week until then. It's been kind of trending on the warmer side the last few days. Thankfully, our air conditioning here at LastCar headquarters came back just in the nick of time because it's just started to kind of get warmer here up in our neck of the woods here. And again, we're not too, it's a little bit cooler at Sears Point versus here, but certainly in the middle of the day when the fog burns off, it gets a bit closer to the weather we have out here. The heat circulation in the cars is definitely going to be an issue. Driver cooling is going to come up. We almost saw a bit of that today in Gateway before we had the lightning hold, and that'll be something to look at. So, of course, on the Cup Series side, we got to look at Chase Elliott coming back to the number 9 car there. Is he going to break through with his first win at Sears Point, which is one of the road courses he has not yet won on? Of course, we've seen him be so good at the Roval and Watkins Glen. Is that suspension going to be enough for him to kind of clear his mind and get ready to go after that? Or, as the promos we've seen here have been, and those have been decent so far, guys like Martin Truex going to be a factor there in the finish. Kyle Larson, of course, is always one to watch coming out here. And then drivers that were, good last year. I mean, we're going to see Daniel Suarez, Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher up there. Is Bubba Wallace going to be bounced back from his last place run last year? We really didn't get a good chance to see if he could improve from 2021 when he overcame that flat tire last year and unfortunately was your last place finisher. He's actually going to be the theme for the magnet on the door because we do that based on the last place finisher of the previous year's Sears Point race the last couple of years. We did Stenhouse before, and I believe Yaley when we came back from the pandemic there for the previous 2. So that's kind of been the trend on that. So that's going to be kind of the pattern there for that. But yeah, I mean, how are they going to perform? We didn't get to really see what Tyler Reddick can do either because he had a brake issue last year in the 8 car. So he didn't get his first win at Sears Point. It ended up happening at Road America, of course, when he drove for Childress. Kyle Busch driving for Childress this time is going to certainly be one to watch. The list goes on. Ross Chastain, is he going to be able to do as well as he did at Circuit of the Americas when he won it last year and had that great burnout there with Suarez? Can Suarez get his first win since last year? I mean, it's going to be interesting. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be just the 36 chartered guys. I'd love it if we got Project 91. I'm not hearing any rumblings on that. The Three Friends team or if Carl Long brings his Cup car out, since it sounds like they're going to have the Xfinity car out here for that. It sounds like on the Xfinity side, we're going to have some Cup guys in the Xfinity race, which again, I'm not a big fan of. Kyle Larson is certainly going to be one to watch there in the number 17 car for the Hendrick Motorsports effort. I don't honestly know why he's running it, but I get it. He basically runs everything, but it just doesn't seem very sporting, honestly, at this point. Ty Gibbs, I get it to more of an extent because he's still trying to get his feet under him. A track he's never raced on before. He wasn't in the truck race last year. Xfinity Series coming out here for the first time. You have kind of that opportunity there at the same time. Other Cup Series guys, I'm trying to think if Ross Chastain's going to be running for Mario Gosselin's team. Again, I'm not even crazy about that. I mean, I'm a little more forgiving of it with it being the Gosselin effort. But, as we've seen with Alex Labbe, on a good day, they can get a really good run out there. So you kind of have that whole effort. But, we'll see. I think that's going to be a different way to kind of look at the same time. A lot of Xfinity guys, in the ARCA West race. Yes. I mean, that'll be another one to talk about too, Sir Rinkelstein. Thank you for bringing that up. Which Sonoma track configuration will be run? My understanding is it's still with the chute. They're not doing the carousel this year, so it's the shorter track. It's the same one that we had last year, but not the one from the year before. With 2019 and 2021, they ran the carousel, but this year we are not doing the carousel, so we're going to have the chute there. So it's the 1.9, I believe it's the 1.99 mile course, not the 2.428 mile course. And so, they should put on a great show. I love that we don't have the stage cautions. And then I have another thing to mention. Let me see if I can smoothly do this here at the same time. Okay, I needed that. Yes, so I have a very special announcement. I should have played that actually after my rant about the broadcast there. But I am wearing a different hat here now, representing Apex Coffee Roasters. And I'm very happy to make an announcement there that as of this weekend, for the second straight year, and those of you in the Patreon are already aware of this, I will be a sponsor, or at least a very small sponsor, but still a sponsor of Brad Perez in the Xfinity Series, last year in the Truck Series with the Rian Brothers effort on the number 43. I Set My Friends on Fire truck this year on the B pillar of the number 53 entry at the Emmerling Gase Motorsports effort. Beautiful ride that Brad has this week. I will again be carrying a logo on the number 53 truck here. This time it'll be visible from the side, so it'll be on both B posts there with the Last Car logo. I should show it on the Twitter. Let's see if I can show it up a bit quicker on my Patreon feed. Let me just pull that up. But we're going to get I have the stickers ordered already, so we're going to have a little space on that. Let me get that pulled up. Where is it? But we're going to get to we have a logo that's going to have the LastCar.info logo on the B pillar of the 53 car there for Brad Perez. It's going to be on both sides. I was very excited about that. We get that set up there, and hopefully, get some good shots of it there on TV. Brad got some pretty good TV time last year in the race. Had a good finish out there, and the number 43 entry there for Josh's team. And so hopefully that'll be a similar situation this time around. But yes, I don't believe I have it on. Do I have it on my phone here? I don't think I do. It should be on there. Oh, you know what? Let me just do it this way. This will make a lot more sense. I'm sure I can do this. Of course, my phone has no bars, and it has fantastic timing. Technical issues have been definitely the theme of today, for sure. So what we will do is I will pull this up on... Can I pull this up on the... Let's get this on the big board here. There it is. Alrighty. So again, so this is the logo that I set up here. That will be on the B pillar of both sides of the number 53 car here. I was told that, again, 1-to-1 is about the best way to make one of these decals here. So I wanted to fit the LastCar logo on there as much as possible. This is actually very similar to the one that was on the truck last year. But that was leftover ones that I had from sponsoring Norm Benning in 2021, when unfortunately he didn't qualify for the race. But this here, as well as being kind of a preview of the Patreon itself, was just posted this past week. It won't have, of course, the watermark across the middle of it. But it is no coincidence that I'm including a picture of the 53 car passing Kyle Larson's number 17 on the graphic. I figured that would be a subtle little addition there. I didn't want to have the 53 car going behind the wall, but I figured showing a pass on that too. So that'll be a little bit fun there. So there's a little bit of a sneak preview for those of you guys. I did get some questions on this earlier. I did order multiple stickers of this. So of course it's going to be the two that are going to be on the car itself. I will make the stickers available for sale on my eBay page. I've actually kind of built that store page back up again because I wanted to create a coupon there where people can get like 2 stickers and then get 1 sticker free. I wanted to kind of put in like a deal like that. So that'll be starting up this week, and these will be included in there. I have one other version of the Brad Perez sticker that'll be coming out. That'll be an exclusive there for the eBay page as well. That'll be a design that'll just have the 53 car, the kind of simplified version of it on that. So we'll have a few of those available. I can certainly reorder more if we get a lot more interest in that. I actually just got an order of the envelopes to send them out too. So we'll have that. So if you want a little bit of a piece of it, piece of this weekend's action, the sticker is 4.5 by 4.5 inches square. And it will look like this. And I think from the render I had on this, it should look pretty good. So hopefully it shows well in the car. I know the car has black B posts on it, and I think that's why I stuck with the black and white there on that. And hopefully it looks good. So we're getting there, folks. We're taking steps towards getting LastCar logo on one of these cars here. One of these days we're going to get an even bigger logo on there. But we're getting there. I got no problem with small steps. But thanks to those of you in the Patreon, of course, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. And again, those of you supporting this channel, that was absolutely what allowed this to be possible this year. And definitely wanted to kind of thank you guys for that and definitely get some more exposure here for the site at the same time. So that is what's going to be on the 53 car here this week. And hopefully we get some good shots of it on the track. But the stickers, stickers will be in tomorrow. I'll have more details on when they're up for sale on the Twitter feed at LastCarOnBrock, and also the store. Among the other things in the store too, I still actually have the parts of the decals from BJ McLeod's car at Fontana. What I've decided to do is actually lump those two together. So originally I had part of the roof sticker and then another one with the sponsor sticker. What I decided to do since then is, really didn't get any traction on that. So instead, I'm just going to sell them all in one auction on that. And those will be, again, I think it's just $10 for the starting bid on that. And whoever gets that is going to get both of those. So those will be available there So look for that on the eBay store there as well. Actually, let me go ahead and drop. I'll jump out of this here, and then I'll drop the link to the store on that. So if you're interested in that, but the stickers, the Brad Perez stickers aren't on there yet, but when they are, they will be available at this link here. And I'll drop that in the chat here for you guys. Where are we? As well. Actually, let me go ahead. Okay, whoop, nope, we don't need to hear the same chat there in the background. All right. Yeah, one step closer to an official NASCAR field filler team. We're getting there. We're getting there, folks. One of these days. I've thought about doing some more stuff, maybe ARCA West, because I could probably get a bigger logo there. But when Brad's deal came up here, and I love the paint scheme. The 53 car looks gorgeous this week. And when I bought this hat, they sent some samples of the coffee there too, so we have it there. I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds lovely. I don't usually drink coffee, but I'm gonna have to this time, and I think this will that'll definitely get me even more psyched for this weekend. But nice hats too, I gotta say. This is the same one that Brad was wearing. I believe it's Circuit of the Americas earlier. So they got some good gear there. ApexCoffee.com, I believe, is the link for that. ApexCoffeeRoasters.com, excuse me. So that's the primary sponsor there on the 53. So that'll be a team that will definitely be watching very closely. Hopefully for the best finish possible there too. But that's going to be the deal on that situation there. So yeah, so thank you guys for your support on that. Hopefully that video wasn't too loud, but I definitely wanted to kind of play that as part of the show here tonight here at the same time. Let's see here. So we'll do some trivia questions here to wrap up the show for the evening. We'll bring out our late 90s trivia deal here. I noticed I made another version of this backdrop here. I need to change that. I thought I made a new one where it wasn't cut off on the screen, but maybe it still had too many. I think it still had too many letters. Could be a little too much of a perfectionist here. Boom, there we go. Exploding brakes, tough brakes. I didn't realize I was above the character limit there, but we'll just fix that there too. Okay. So we'll do some trivia questions to wrap up this evening, and that will be that'll be our show for this week, and then we'll go from there. So again, let me know in the chat which categories you like. We'll do some questions here to wrap up the evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. So again, the late 90s deal here: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Once again, those categories, I'll read them off a bit slower here: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. And again, those are the categories. So again, we'll just do this for fun here, some Q&A here for the end of the show. And if you guys have any other questions from this weekend, don't hesitate to ask. I'll kind of check through the deal here at the same time. Let's see. I just want to be in the text box during the video. Was the text box still during the video? I couldn't see because I just blew it up on my screen, so that'd be pretty funny. But yeah. Mark, I didn't see your comment about Kyle Busch. But I'll browse back here because I'm so busy gesticulating and stuff during the show that sometimes I don't check it right away there. Also, those of you coming into the Sears Point race too, I'm going to try to set up a meetup on race morning. I wasn't able to last year because we got there really late, but this year I'd like to really do one. I may do it before the Pockrass one because I don't want to distract from that. I mean, if they do it really early, I'm going to have no choice but to probably do it about the same time. But I don't want people to have to make a choice or anything. Maybe I'll do it near theirs. So I just don't want to be doing it in theirs because they got their own thing, they got their own people, they got their own stuff and all that. I know people enjoy that one too. But I usually run into so many people there during the weekend. I think it'd be easier to just kind of set something up there, and hopefully I don't miss people. I know Garrett, I talked to you a lot here, but we don't have you haven't met up on that. Oh, tech is done. We have tech. Okay, was that the post about Busch? I guess we're done, and Busch is the winner. Okay, well, that's good. At least that takes care of that. Let's see. I'll read it from here. That must have been a while ago. An off-site fiber connectivity failure that happened at the track. Wow. See, again, I can't help but, notice that it was the same problem from a while ago. Yes, okay, 20 minutes ago, tech complete, no issues. Busch is the winner. Gilliland and Jones' car to the R&D Center for Tech. Buescher's car goes to the wind tunnel. Well, there's an interesting selection of cars. So 2 Fords and a Chevy between R&D and the wind tunnel, and then Busch, the winner of the race there. So congratulations to Kyle Busch. That's 3 wins for him this year now. He won Fontana, he won Talladega, and he wins now here. Gateway, fantastic start to the year for him, and he's not going to need that bump at Sears Point that he had a while back there too. Did it rain a little bit in Sonoma last year? I don't think last year. I remember 2013 it rained before practice. That happened. Brakes and brakes. Yeah, there we go. We had to use some homonyms on the card here for the thing for sure. Fight with Mother Nature, lose every time, Donnie Hodgkins. Yeah, exactly. That too. Most of the radio broadcaster lost media. Dignity is what's needed. Very, very well put. Very well put. Oh, the Waltrip phone situation. I wasn't even watching that. Well, look, coming from me, I'm the guy that lost the last car certificate for BJ McLeod on pit road at the championship race. I still don't know where that went. I hope it didn't cause Brad Keselowski's car to catch on fire, because that was at the back of my mind, but that happened at the end of the race, so I'm guessing it didn't. I don't know how that even would, but you had the, I'm glad Mikey got his phone back. I'm glad the camera, it's great. You have camera work that could find Michael Waltrip dropping his phone, but, Alex Bowman dropping out in the last couple races, last couple laps, who knows? Who knows what happened? I love that they had 2 different rounds, apparently 2 different rounds of explosions on the backstretch, and they missed both of them. Now, they did show it later, but they didn't show it live. I don't get why they don't show it live. They show all these tight shots of the crowd and of the cars. They seem to be going out of their way to not show this ordnance or whatever they're blowing up on the back straightaway. And they did it twice this time, and they still missed it. I couldn't believe it. Just hilarious. It's like, my goodness. It's just insane. It's just insane. See some discussion about SRX earlier. Yeah, I don't know what to expect on that this year, but we'll see. The truck race is June 4th, 2011. Yeah, talk about the NASCAR man, I think, posted that about the anniversary of the Hold My Watch race. Go figure. Which category do we have here on this? Yeah, Joey Coulter. Yeah, there's a blast from the past. Andrew Bremner, any news on 500 days? Still working on that. I was actually doing a little bit of research here during the IndyCar race today, waiting for the Cup race to resume. But nothing new in terms of an episode. I'm certainly not going to have anything new this week because I'm going to be focusing on getting ready for Sears Point. Next video I'm hoping to record will be my Trevor Boys video because I have that script ready to go. And after that, I'd like to get field fillers next episode done. I don't know if it's a matter of how I'm going to stagger the next 500 days episode into it. At that point, it'll be a race as to which one of those gets done sooner. I'll probably end up recording both of those at the same time, and then whichever one's done first, I'll just release it. And then, hopefully we get to a point where we get more regular stuff. But yeah, it's still in the works. Still in the works for sure. Brock Beard racing, fielding an open car. Yeah, that would be fun. We get the last car logos all over it. This would look nice on the side. You put like a nice stripe, maybe like a racing stripe up at the front with the last car logo like sideways or something. That would look pretty sick. Just kind of really take advantage of the body style. I'll have to work with, I think it's Harris Liu that did the paint scheme for Brad. He did a fantastic job. I'd have to get like Harris Liu or Ryan Daly or one of those guys to kind of help out because certainly my graphic design skills are much more limited. For sure. I could get along okay, but in terms of something that's going to sound good, yeah. 4 for wild card, 2 for pits, and 1 for drivers. Okay, thank you, RD Fox. We'll do wild card here tonight. Here we go. First question here, folks. Whose 1997 winnings and endorsements placed him third among all athletes? whose 1997 winnings and endorsements placed him third among all athletes? That is our first question here, folks. I dig the chute configuration, Joss the Bases. Yep, saw a 2012 race in person with that. That was a great race. That was a fantastic race. Very excited to see what we get out here. I mean, man, Xfinity is going to be so good. So good. Hey there, Coaster News. Possibly see you at Sonoma. Absolutely. Keep an eye out for sure. Keep an eye out on the Twitter feed. Again, I'm plan on doing a meetup there at the track, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, don't be a stranger. I got a new fit set up for the track this weekend. I have retired the utility belt. That is no longer working very well, especially when I lost the certificate with it last year. That pretty much ended that. So since Phoenix last year, I've been working on a different setup for my wardrobe at the track. I like the polo shirts. I think those fit in better with the crew members and stuff. But this year I got an actual vest. I have a utility vest that should fit all my stuff in there, and I can be able to access it a lot easier. And we'll have some more on that. So, but the white hat, this hat will still stay the same. Pretty much changed everything else. So I still got the scanner and the voice recorder and stuff, but I'm looking for something that's a lot more user friendly there for that. So hopefully that'll work out well. This will be the first real test of it. Same thing with my shoes too. I changed my shoes because they were painfully uncomfortable at Phoenix. So I immediately set to work looking to find some much more comfortable sneakers at the track there. Finally found some pairs I've been breaking in since January. It was too wet in Fontana to wear them, but this will be the first test for those at the track. So that'll be another thing to kind of work on here too. Let's see here. Offset fiber connectivity failure for the issue there for sure. Kyle Foster, thank you for tuning in too. See you on Friday for sure. And definitely check out Kyle's YouTube channel as well. He and I did an interview with Jill Gregory, the track president at Sears Point, a couple weeks ago there, and we had and he followed it up with a good discussion. We were talking about last place finishers and stuff on the channel there too. So definitely check out Kyle Foster's channel on YouTube. You can see that video as well. I believe I have a playlist of the podcasts I've been on there, so I try to keep that up to date. So we'll add that one on there too. The question once again here was, whose 1997 winnings and endorsements placed him third among all athletes? And we got a lot of guesses for Jeff Gordon. Mark Martin is one. The answer is Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt is the correct answer. Mike D got it. Mike D is correct. Dale Earnhardt is the correct answer. It does seem like it would be a Jeff Gordon question, doesn't it? Just shows that I guess winning really isn't everything. Let's see. What baseball team does Dale Earnhardt cheer for? Is the next question. So again, think of late 1990s for sure. What baseball team does Dale Earnhardt Sr. cheer for? Is the next question. Yeah, is that a Trivial Pursuit NASCAR machine? Yes, it is. I got this in 2001 in my senior night in, did I just read the answer? I should show the answer on screen. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, these things are available. There's tons of them on eBay. I've seen them for as little as like $10. Great thing to have on hand for like a road trip or hanging out with fans. I used this at the Starcom hauler during the Darlington rain delay. We did a couple questions there, and that was kind of fun. But yeah, there's tons of questions on here. I have some other questions on hand that I got from a board game that I use sometimes too, but this has been kind of our go-to for most of this. What baseball team does Dale Earnhardt Sr. cheer for is the question. We got answers for Atlanta Braves. We got one for Baltimore Orioles. There you go. The answer is indeed Atlanta Braves. A lot of you got that. You guys got that. It was too easy. Atlanta Braves is correct. Alrighty. Next question. Here's an intriguing one. Nicknames is probably the overall category. What driver was dubbed Chicken Snake by his crew chief, Tony Glover? What driver was dubbed Chicken Snake by his crew chief, Tony Glover? I don't think we've had that one on here before. What happened to Quinn Houff? Good question. I am not sure. I have not seen him since that day that they loaded up the 00 there at Phoenix a couple of years ago. Give me them fake internet points. There you go. One for Josh the Bassist. Exactly. Next one here. What driver was dubbed Chicken Snake by his crew chief, Tony Glover? Let this one settle in a bit more here. All right, we got guesses for Rudd, for Irvin, for Robbie Gordon, for Sterling Marlin. All right, one more time. What driver was dubbed Chicken Snake by his crew chief, Tony Glover? And the answer is Sterling Marlin. Maserati 9 got it. Jonathan Wayand got it as well. Sterling Marlin is the correct answer. I would have guessed Irvin. I would have guessed Irvin for sure. Chicken Snake. Sterling Marlin, the Chicken Snake. There's a new one. Oh, now here's one where you have to kind of dig back in the memories here a little bit. How many race segments is the Winston divided into? Now, the Winston's had a great number of formats, but you're going to have to think about this one. This is a late 90s thing. How many race segments is the Winston divided into is the question. How many race segments is the Winston divided into? Got my Kevin. I liked the Sunny D paint scheme that Kevin Harvick ran. I had to pull the trigger on this. I thought it was nice. I liked how it looked. I'm a sucker for fluorescent orange. I'm afraid I'm just weak to it. It reminded me so much of like old Robbie Gordon schemes. It reminded me more of that than it did Kevin Harvick running the America Online car. The blue and gold would have been more accurate. But Sunny D and the old Sunny D logo, I thought that was cool. And he got second in it somehow, which is kind of impressive. How many race segments is the Winston divided into is the question. Yeah, I guess it's for 4 and 3. All right. 40 laps and 20 and 15. 10, right? Okay, we'll see. What did I think of the IndyCar race? I enjoyed it. I liked it. I was perfectly, if I was watching it on a little bit of a delay. I think it was pretty much over when the Cup race actually started. But when I stopped it, it was like 40 laps to go. I might actually watch the rest of it. I've already heard who won. It won't spoil it. But, look, I thought it was great. Will Power was putting on a clinic. I know he always does. I love seeing Flava Flav there, too. And he had the Will Power shirt. That was awesome because I have a shirt like almost like that, which I got for Will, from Will's store years ago. But that was great. Everybody looked like they were having a great time. I love the view from where the Chevy building was and that pit road. I thought that was pretty hip. I hate losing Belle Isle, though. I'm not as familiar with the history, but I know that, that's kind of the place to go. But yeah. But good question, Willie B. How many race segments is the Winston divided into? The answer is 3. 3 is the correct answer. Yeah, I was surprised Sunny D jumped from Stenhouse. Yeah, it was just last year, right, that they had the Sunny D paint scheme, especially since Harvick already had Busch as a sponsor. You would think that a beverage sponsor wouldn't want another beverage thing on there, even though it's a completely different demographic and, alcoholic versus non-alcoholic. Although I guess you got Coca-Cola racing drivers, but I'm thinking about how many of them are sponsored by other drinks. I guess, I don't know. Historically, it wouldn't be the case. I think about like the time back when it was like, Rudd and Dale Jarrett and Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt. Elliott would be the closest with McDonald's, but McDonald's is a Coke restaurant, so you got that. But yeah. 3 is the correct answer on that one. How many stages of the Winston? It was good to see Gray Galding back. I know he didn't have the greatest run and the car stalled out on him. And apparently he had a really rough ride coming back, as I guess the truck was really kind of pushing him hard to get back to pit road. But it was good to see him back out there. I think that was another one where, adjusting to the next-gen car, which he hadn't run yet, was certainly a challenge. But he was actually doing a decent job keeping up with the back of the field at the start. Usually I'm used to seeing the last couple cars really drop off, especially in a long run like that after we got back from the lightning hold. But credit where credit's due. He kept up with B.J. McLeod and Yaley and those guys pretty well. It's only, and he was still on the lead lap when it conked out. I know he had so many cautions, it helped that, but he still stayed. He wasn't like he lost 5 laps at the beginning of the race and just never got it back. We see that so often with some of these small teams, but they kind of closed the gap. I thought that was an impressive run for the Rick Ware group there. It's just unfortunate they don't really have the finish to show for it. But when you have low attrition, that's what happens. Next question here. What driver earned all district honors as a linebacker at a Texas high school? DeGray loses ride with Bobby Dotter. I don't know what's going on with that. Because he's been back and forth with him a few times. Like he parted ways and he went to Jimmy Means, and then he left Means and he went back to Dotter. And now they kind of split the rides. I noticed the car Preston Pardis ran was one of old Joe Graff's paint schemes on there. So I don't know what's going on with Bobby Dotter's team and what they're going to get this week. Hopefully they put Pardis still in the car to give them a good shot at it. But I mean, mechanically they seem to be having issues. I saw Pardis kind of break down at one point during the Xfinity race. What driver earned all district honors as a linebacker at a Texas high school is the question. We got answers for Bobby Labonte, Steve Grissom, Terry Labonte. Yeah, we're going to be watching that 53 car very closely this weekend, so stay tuned for more of that. I'm very excited to get those stickers to Brad. So we ordered the stickers ourselves so we could bring those out, but again, if you want stickers from the same batch that we're going to get put on the 53 car there, those will be available. Hopefully, if not tomorrow, certainly by Tuesday. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I'll probably start setting it up tomorrow and then make them available on Tuesday. So if you're looking for that, those will be available. And we'll also have a sale on the stickers in general because I have some other designs on there. It's not going to include the Kenny Irwin ones. I keep those at $10 because those are more for the profits from those go to the Kenny Irwin Foundation. But these other ones in general here are just more fun deals there. So we got some throwback stickers on there, the regular bumper stickers like the ones on my car, and those on there. And these will be added into that, so that'll be fun. What driver earned all district honors as a linebacker at a Texas high school is the question. We got Bobby Hillen. We got Terry Labonte, Steve Grissom. The answer is indeed Bobby Hillen. Bobby Hillen Jr. Bobby Hillen Jr. is the correct answer. A few of you got it. Maserati 9 got it. Glenn 7000 got it. Mike D got it. Yes. Bobby Hillen for sure. Bulgogi 77. Random comment, but too many fans take safety for granted in today's sport. I fear a lot of them will be in for a rude awakening at some point in the coming years. Racing will always be dangerous. Very good point. And again, not to piggyback too much on it to my previous discussion, but I think the broadcast has a lot to do with it because I think they take it for granted. But a very good point. I think that, you could argue one causes the other or they're all connected and all that. But there does seem to be, there's a culture that seems to take safety for granted. And we certainly saw that from the Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin thing. That could have been a very serious accident, whether or not Hamlin was hit by another car or not. Going nose first into the dog leg there is nothing to snark at. Again, that was the same thing with Blaze Alexander. There's been other very serious hits in that corner too that certainly come to play. So or certainly come to certainly ones you got to think of for sure. But yes, it's a very dangerous sport, and I think understanding that would guide the hand of these broadcasts a little better. And it's not just a Fox thing. I pick on Fox a lot because the problems are more glaring, but NBC does this too. And we'll jump into that too, on top of the fact that they have too many people in the booth that sound the same, that shout over the top of each other, which is a unique NBC problem. They really should have Steve Letarte on pit road. I think he's a much better pit reporter than a broadcaster guy. I think Jeff Burton, as much as I like Jeff Burton and respect Jeff Burton, I'm not sure if he's the best in a broadcasting role. It's too much. And Junior, you're going to have to dynamite him out of that seat. It's just not going to happen. But I think Junior brings a lot of historical context to it. And so on top of him being who he is. And then Rick Allen is I don't know, he's just not getting the right direction. He's not what he was when he was in the Truck Series, which is bizarre and disappointing. That needs to change. So, alrighty, we'll do one more question here. Yeah, there you go. No, Tony Roper at Texas. Yeah, that one too for sure. We'll do one more question for tonight. We got a wow, we're over 2 hours. We'll just do one more question here to wrap up the show for tonight, folks. Last question of the evening. What driver was known as No Neck among his peers? That is the question. What driver was known as No Neck among his peers is the question. So again, think about the late 90s time period that this was made in. Yeah, Burton does sound like Junior, and that's the thing. And I think Steve Letarte sounds too much like both of them, because Steve Letarte's very loud like the other two. Like when Lasbro's here, I have to kind of tell him, it's like, oh no, that's Steve. Oh no, that's Jeff. Oh no, that's Dale. And it's like, you can't tell them apart. It's like, uh-oh. I mean, say what you will about Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip, and Mike Joy, but you could tell who is who. You could tell. I mean, they're very different. Different dialects and different attitudes and so forth. So once again, this is the last question of the evening. What driver was known as No Neck among his peers? No Neck. Yeah, no, complacency. Take it from me, man. I've lived through it. Complacency was exactly what got us 2000 and 2001. It really was. And that obviously that turned out to be what it was. And we'll learn more about that in 500 days. That story is still going to keep going in those future episodes. Other revelations do come up along the way. So we'll track through it. I hope it does well. The hit counts are a little low on that series so far. I'm a little concerned about that, especially after just now committing to the full season. But I mean, I can't stop it at this point. I can't just not do it. I think people are concerned that I'm just doing that series, which is not true. I am planning on spacing those out between field fillers and other standalones. There's actually a lot of standalone videos I'd like to do, and some that I've already coordinated with Brian Hallman on. And so I'm looking to kind of clear the decks on that and get those done. So these next two in particular, definitely the next field fillers and the standalone one on Trevor Boys, are ones that they've been on the back burner for too long. I got to get those done. And then the Derek Cope book will hopefully come together pretty soon too. So the last question for this evening again, folks, what driver was known as No Neck among his peers? And the answer is, they call him Cale Yarborough. So Ryan Newman's a little bit too new for that. And it is not Jimmy Spencer, unfortunately, although those are both excellent guesses. But it is Cale Yarborough is the correct answer. Maserati 9, see you again on that one. So absolutely. So that will do it for this evening's show. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Again, keep an eye out for car number 53 this weekend. Fingers crossed on qualifying. I don't know how many cars are going to be there. West Coast trip, we tend to get shorter entry lists, but again, it's up in the air. We saw that with the Truck Series last year. But we got our trackside coverage back this weekend. Our Ben Schneider, our other staff writer, is going to be coming down from Portland there and help with the coverage there. So stay tuned for his Twitter feed there as well. Mine, of course, is at Last Car on Brock. So we'll have some more information on you for this next week. The Cup Series article, which will now be on Carson Hocevar when we have inspections now been cleared up. The Hocevar article will be tonight. Thursday will be our entry list storylines. Friday will be at the track there for the West Series action. Saturday for Xfinity, and Sunday for Cup. So stay tuned for at Lasker on Brock on Twitter. Patreon is patreon.com/Lasker on Brock. If you want to get your name on the magnet and entered into the winner's drawing to win it after the conclusion of this weekend's action, you can still join anytime between now and the checkered flag on Sunday. And get your name on there. And then we'll do the drawing for that next week. Our next show will be not on Sunday for the race there. So we'll do the show likely on Monday evening after that there. And we'll talk about the entire week's action there for the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. We'll talk about the West Series race and just little bits in between. And we're just going to have ourselves a whale of a time out there. So stay tuned out there. Again, watch car number 53, Brad Perez. Big thanks to the Emerling Gase Motorsports Group there for that opportunity. It's Sears Point week, folks. Most wonderful time of the year here in Northern California. The Save Mart grocery stores already have their decorations up, and we're going to bring it all to you this week. So I'm happy to have you guys along for the ride. And stay tuned for our meetup we're going to do on Sunday. And I think that's about it. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I'll see you all next time.